Good morning, class. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Welcome to our first official online learning session for grade 11 college biology. And we are starting the genetics unit. And I'm going to go through this PowerPoint with you. I have posted it, or I will be posting it through Google Classroom. And there are some animations at the end that are really good. I found them on YouTube, which you should be watching them as well. I will be posting the pictures that are that go with this PowerPoint as well to supplement the PowerPoint lesson. In your textbook. I think the page numbers will show up for those of you that do have a textbook. Otherwise, I've taken pictures of the pages for you and posting them on the Google Classroom. So there's quite a lot of vocabulary we need to So these are some of the terminology. There's a lot more terminology that you will have to learn, but basically the unit is going to be covering basically the study of the relationship between genes. So basically that those components of your genetic information within the chromosomes, which is made up of DNA within your cells, and the heredity that is where the information is passed on from parent cells to daughter cells, and the complexity of that relationship. And we're going to go through that together during this unit. We are going to talk about mitosis. You learned about this last year in grade 10, most of you. We're going to go through this again, but basically it's the division of the nucleus into two genetically identical nuclei. So basically producing two identical cells from one cell. And then we have meiosis, which is basically cell division, very similar to mitosis, but it involves two divisions instead of one, and with only one duplication of chromosomes. And this process is really for the development of the sex cells that join together to form new individuals. Parent cell is a cell that divides by mitosis into two genetically identical cells. So this is the one that we're talking about when we talk about mitosis. And daughter cells are the cells that are basically genetically identical cells that are produced from these parent cells when they divide through mitosis. In addition to those terms, you really need to understand the difference between chromatin, chromatid, and chromosome. Basically, it's DNA for all three of these terms, but it's the organization of the DNA that is different for all of the three of them. So chromatin is the thread-like structure of DNA and proteins that is found within the nucleus of a cell, but it looks like a big scrambled mess, an unscrambled mess of DNA. Chromatid is when you have this chromatin becoming more organized. It coils and it forms eventually the chromosome. So each of the two identical chromosome strands in a replicated chromosome attached by their shared centromere. So this right here, this structure right here is a chromatid, and on this side you also have a chromatid. These are known as sister chromatids, and they're attached together by this centrally located centromere. Okay, and this is what is known as a duplicated or double-stranded chromosome. But when you untangle all this DNA, you basically get this, eventually, after fully untangling, you get this chromatin. And when you organize this chromatin, there are these special proteins, these are called histone proteins, that allow for the chromatin to basically spin around and organize themselves so that they eventually form these chromosomes. But when you break this, when you break the chromatin down to its simplest form, you eventually have what is known as the double-stranded DNA molecules. Okay? Some more important terms that you will learn that you have not learned before in grade 10. Well, maybe gene. A gene is basically a segment of DNA that carries a code for a specific protein. Allele is basically one form of a gene for a specific trait. So, for example, if the gene, oops, how did that happen? If the gene on the chromosome is for eye color, for example, the allele would either be for blue, brown, or green eye color. So it's the form of the gene for a specific trait. You will understand this concept or this definition as we move forward. Diploid is basically the number of chromosomes in a body cell of an organism which has 2 chromosomes of each type per cell. So diploid number means 2 and 2 times the number of chromosomes. Haploid is half the number of chromosomes in a cell that contains a single set of chromosomes, and these you will have haploid, or half the number of chromosomes, in what are known as gametes, and these are cells that are the sex cells. So sperm cells or egg cells have half the number of chromosomes, because when you have a egg cell unite with a sperm cell to form a fertilized egg cell, you need to have half the number of chromosomes from each type of cell, so that then you will have diploid eventually. Somatic cells are basically body cells. They have diploid number, so complete number of chromosomes, 2 from either parent, basically. And sex cells are the cells that are that have half the number of chromosomes. So you either have sex cells include the sperm or the egg cells, and the union between the sperm and the egg cell is necessary in sexual reproduction to initiate the development of a new individual. Okay, so sex cells are also known as gametes. And gametes are, again, the same thing, egg and sperm cells that unite during sexual reproduction. So, the cell cycle. So we want to talk a little bit about what happens in the cell during its lifetime. So the cell cycle is basically a repeating series of events that occurs as a cell grows and divides. There's a number of different phases, but the first phase of the cell cycle is known as the interphase. And most of the cells' life will be in this phase, which is the interphase. And then a short part of that cell's life will be in the mitosis phase, which is the dividing phase. Okay? This includes those 4 different stages of mitosis, of the division process. This is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And then eventually cytokinesis, which is this basically the end of mitosis when the cells actually divide, forming new daughter cells. So here we have mitosis. As you can see, it's a small chunk of the actual full cycle of the cell. And then we have this G1 phase of interphase. So from here all the way down to back to the blue section is called interphase. See, the purple with the white arrow represents interphase. So the first part of the interphase after cell division, when the cell is new, is the cell growth. So this is the G1 phase. Then you have what is known as the S phase, or the synthesis phase, when the DNA is actually being replicated and getting ready for division. And then we also have the G2 phase, which is also the cell is starting to prepare for the cell division process. Again, so you have the small section of the cell cycle, which is mitosis. Then you have G1 phase, the beginning of cell growth. The synthesis phase, this is where the DNA is replicated, making basically a copy of the DNA is made. And then the DNA right here in this phase is in the form of chromatin. And then you have G2, which is where the cell undergoes the regular functions and prepares for mitosis. The purpose of the cell cycle, or the purpose of mitosis and interphase, is basically to replace dead or dying cells and to allow an organism to grow and develop. Okay, so the purpose of mitosis is to replace dead or dying cells and allow for the organism to grow and to develop. So that's why mitosis is very much an important part of any cell's life cycle. So consider the following. Humans begin life as one cell. We all know that. That is a fertilized egg cell. When a sperm and an egg cell come together during or right after sexual intercourse, the zygote that is formed eventually becomes a complete human being. Okay, we become trillions of cells before being born because of the whole process of cell division. After we are born, cell division continues as we grow through that process of mitosis. And as adults, cell division replaces worn out tissues or damaged tissues. Even after we have stopped growing, we still need that mitosis, the process of cell division, to be able to repair our bodies and continue. For example, the lining of the digestive tract is constantly being needing replacement because of the fact that there is high acidity in your digestive tract, and those cells are being worn out all the time. The blood cells are needed. There's so many different types of blood cells, right? White blood cells that are important for the immune system, red blood cells that are important for the delivery of oxygen and to get rid of waste products. And the lining of the respiratory system is always being damaged by things that you are, for example, the the respiratory tract includes your nasal cavity, and you're constantly breathing in things that are damaging those cells that are lining that nasal cavity. So we need to be able to replace those cells that are worn out or damaged. New skin cells, when we cut ourselves, there's a multitude of different reasons we need for cell division to take place. Mitosis. So what happens during cell division? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that the genetic information is passed from parent cell to daughter cells. So each new cell that is being formed as a result of mitosis needs to have exactly the same genetic information. So DNA copies, the chromosomes basically are after copied, they're separated and sorted into two sides of the cell. The cell then eventually splits into two, and part of each parent is carried to two new cells, and each daughter cell is basically identical to the parent cell if everything goes according to plan. Okay, sometimes this doesn't happen, and we're going to learn about this process where this, some of the information is missing, etc. Mitosis also results in cells such as internal organs, skin, bones, and blood, etc. Many, many different types of body tissues. Again, the phases of mitosis includes interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. Okay, so this is part of the actual mitosis process. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, PMAT for short, and interphase is required. The end of interphase is getting the cell prepared for PMAT, and then cytokinesis is right at the end where the cells are actually separated. So during interphase, what happens is that the DNA, so this is an unreplicated, this is a very simplified diagram of a chromosome. It's unreplicated, it's a single-stranded chromatid. And so what happens is that the DNA, which makes up that chromatid, is duplicated or replicated along with the organelles and other cellular components, and the cell basically prepares for cell division. So this is where the this is now what you have at the end of interphase before mitosis. You have those chromosomes that are duplicated. So, and these are two sister chromatids. They're identical to each other. So this is just a diagram of interphase during the in an animal versus plant cell. Prophase, step 1 of mitosis, is basically where the DNA will recoil and the chromosomes condense. Okay, so the chromatid becomes chromosomes. These are duplicated chromosomes. Okay, you can see the centromeres here, the dark regions of purple, and then the two strands that are basically pinched in at the centromere location. The nuclear membrane disappears and the mitotic spindles begin to form. So, oops, sorry about that. These are called the centrioles. Okay, and these are the spindle fibers that form from the centrioles, and they will, as the nuclear membrane disappears, they will attach to those centromeres, and they will be responsible for pulling those double-stranded sister chromatids apart eventually. So this is, you can kind of see that happening in these diagrams here of animal versus plant cell. And you notice that the plant cell is a lot more boxier, and you can see it's a lot, the cell wall and the cell membrane area is very thick compared to the animal cell, because there's a cell wall within the plant cell. Metaphase, the second part of the mitosis, meiotic division. The spindle fibers, as you can see from the centrioles, attached to the centrosome, the chromosomes are basically lined up in the middle of that cell, which is called the metaphase plate, so the middle of the cell. Again, here you see the spindle fibers right here, basically branching from the centrioles. These are the chromosomes right in the middle of the center of the animal cell, and here we have that over here in the animal plant cell as well. Anaphase is when those chromosomes are basically split at the centromere. So each sister chromatid is pulled by the spindle fibers to the opposite poles of the cell during anaphase. And you see that here in the animal and plant cells. And then the final part of the telophase before cytokinesis is that the chromosomes and the cytoplasm and organelles basically divide into two portions. And in an animal cell, this is called, when the cells divide into two, they separate into two identical cells, two identical separate cells. This happens because of this cleavage furrow that starts to take place. And now the nucleolus is reforming, and the nuclear envelope is starting to form again, and then those single-stranded chromosomes are going to be found within that nuclear envelope, within that nuclear region, and then this cell will enter into interphase again. So after mitosis, cytokinesis, the actual splitting of the cytoplasm into two separate cells, is what this is called, cytokinesis. It occurs differently in both plant and animal cells. In an animal cell, a cleavage furrow pinches the cell. Okay, this is the cleavage furrow. And then in a plant cell, there is a cell plate. This is the cell plate that basically forms between the two the new cells, the daughter cells. And then after cytokinesis, these cells, these new daughter cells will start the interphase process again. So let me just go back to interphase. I'm going to, oops. And this is the beginning of interphase, where the cell will start to grow and do all the things that it needs to do, depending on what type of cell there is. At the end of this PowerPoint, guys, there is 3 videos that I posted. They are really, really good videos to watch, and they're animations basically of what I just talked about, so that would be very useful for you to watch them. And I will speak to you again soon. Take care and have a great day, hon.